How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another lesson. This is lesson 2 officially of the Beginner to Guitarist series. Today we're going to be going over some issues that you may have encountered from last lesson, which is going to introduce us to some new concepts or some ways to get around some issues that you might be experiencing. We're going to learn another new song this week. Hopefully you have your capo. You'll need a capo. You can play it without the capo, it'll just be in a different key. But this week it'll be The Scientist by Coldplay. Oh, Coldplay, not a big fan, but old stuff, very good. Scientist, very good. Apologies for Coldplay fans. Music is subjective. Alright, so, last week, if you'd followed the series, you might have started to try and learn some chords. These might involve C, D minor, E minor, G, and even that spicy F with the thumb. Now, full disclosure, I've got the capo on here, so it's going to sound a little bit differently, but these principles will apply. One thing you might have noticed is that you're spending most of your time actually getting into the positions, or should I say getting between chords. Some chords are easy to get between, so for instance E and A minor, because two of the fingers are the exact same, you just move them down one. But in other chords, between other chords, it might be a lot more difficult. For instance, from G to D minor. That's going to be a lot more difficult. So, how we break down songs, and this is how you teach yourself songs as well. Let's say I've got a song that goes from C, remember the staircase chord, to A minor, to G. Two things you need to look for: fingers that are close or similar, and where to put your fingers so that the next chord is easier to play. You can think about it like dance moves. You can think about it in terms of, I don't know, anything you'd like that essentially, if you have to get from here to here, think about which fingers you need to use and what positions you need to take to minimize the amount of movement between chords. So it's trying to minimize the amount of movement your fingers have to encounter to get between chords. Because at the moment, your fingers aren't yet used to playing guitar. So they need more time, they need more simplicity, right? You can't just be out here doing these jumps yet. Trying to make it as simple as possible. For instance, last week I suggested that you play E minor, which is two fingers on the second fret, and they're your middle fingers. The reason why I recommended you to play it with the middle two fingers instead of the first two, even though these might feel stronger, is because let's say normally you have to go from E minor to A minor, or G, or C, and it's much shorter of a distance to travel if you're using your middle two fingers. So here, I'm going to go to C. In C, my ring finger, this one, needs to go there. My middle finger needs to go down one, to there. And see how my index finger is now hanging? I can just put it down there. So the amount of, like, if you think about the hand in terms of like an overall shape, it's really moving from here to there. It's really just rotating. In a very simplified shape, it goes from this to this. So we're going middle fingers of this to this. Rather than going from this, which is now like more diagonal and sideways, to that. So you can see how there's less movement overall at your wrist, which will really help. Now, the other part of that, so I want you to fixate, when you're learning from now on, fixate on how you're getting from chord to chord. For instance, let's see if I go from C to D minor. That might be a massive jump for you because we're going from the staircase shape to the confusing all over the place shape of D minor. But at a general level, your three fingers are in a row and they're just dropping. They're just going from here to there. There's just a rotation. You have to be very specific about what your index and ring fingers are doing because they have to hit the right strings. But ultimately, it's just that to that. that to that. If you try to use other fingers, then you're doing a massive jump. So just think about that. Fixate on the transitions between chords and you'll improve massively and quite quickly. That's also another reason why we use the thumb for that F chord that I showed you in Taylor. Because then the movement I have to do from A minor to F there's no rotation at all. It's just very small movements. Practice that. Remember to arch your fingers. Always arch your fingers. If you're buzzing, if your notes are buzzing, you need to arch and you need to move your fingers forwards towards the metal parts of the frets, the front of them. Okay. Now, on the topic of getting away with stuff, because remember the goal is to sound like a great guitarist, even though I know and you know deep down you're not yet. With the right hand, you can give yourself a bit more time in between chords. For instance, let's say we're playing C, that's fine, and then we have to go to D minor. Now you're going to have a little moment there where you fiddle with your index and your ring fingers to remember, is it this or is it this? But most likely you'll get this middle finger on first, or maybe there's one part of the guitar that you're going to hit first. With your right hand, you can give yourself a second of time. You can give yourself a little bit of a delay. Guitarists do this all the time. Good guitarists even do this all the time. Let's say you're going from here to here. You could arpeggiate instead to give yourself a bit of extra time so that when you get to that bottom string, you have an extra bit of time to put it back on. So like, let's say if I've jumped up to C, I get the first two. See how I had extra time there? Same thing there. The more smooth you are with delaying little parts and allowing yourself a second to put your fingers on, the less noticeable your mistakes will be. So you can get away with it. See, for instance, a chord you're going to learn today, and I think it's sort of the only new chord, maybe there's another one, is D. D is you put your first two fingers a string apart on the second fret. So you stack them like this. Then you get your ring finger and put it in between on the third fret. So it's a triangle, right? You can see the triangle. But you'd think that you'd want to play it, I can't even do it wrong anymore because it's just so ingrained. It feels weird to be putting these fingers like this, but like I said, minimizes distances and allows you to do other stuff with other fingers. But normally you're going to have a little bit of a confusion as to what the order of the fingers are. If you go to strum, you'll have a moment between hitting the top notes and the bottom notes. Utilize that gap to then put the bottom fingers on later. So you've got a little bit extra time. And even if you do have a little bit extra time and you don't get it, it makes a nice sound. Now, when you play a D chord, and you will be learning this today, play it from the D string. Okay, so what we've gone over is the transitions between chords. That'll be really important at your level. That will be the bane of your existence at this level. But that will be the thing that you notice is getting better the quickest. Okay, you can get away with not putting your fingers on exactly right at the immediate instant that you need to play the chord. Use your right hand to compensate and give yourself an extra second to do it. Prioritize fingers on the basis of which is going to be strummed first, and then you can put on the other fingers later. You learnt the D chord just then, which looks like this. Remember, you can practice it on your arm if you don't have a guitar. Two fingers like this, ring finger in between, triangle shape. Play it from the D string downwards. You should be able to visualize it in your head. Second fret, third fret, like that. You should be able to practice guitar without even having a guitar. You can do this on your phone. You can do it on anything that's essentially like this wide. Okay, now, onto the right hand. Some things that you might have discovered. Oh, Lachlan, I'm playing the chords well. They're not buzzing, but why is my strumming bad? It's because you're stiff. It's because you're probably stiff. Relax, relax, relax. Imagine as if you're dancing or tapping on a table. Right, so be decisive, but don't be stiff. Strumming, if you're using a pick, the same principle applies. It comes from the elbow and the wrist. It's like a chain. Sometimes you do want to be more stiff, but that's not for you yet. What you're trying to do is not be rigid. You want to be flowy, like dancing. You'll sound better at playing guitar if you can use what is called dynamics. And dynamics is essentially making your playing either really soft in moments of tension and really loud. But you want it to be really flowy. If you're feeling goofy with the strumming, it probably is goofy. If it feels nice and sort of aesthetic and if it feels good, it probably is. If you're doing this sort of stuff, these jerky motions, it's probably not ideal. This leads me on to the next topic of play in front of a mirror. You want to play in front of a mirror, especially if you're self-teaching, because then you can actually see yourself playing and you can see, do I look like a guitarist or do I look like someone who's learning how to play guitar? If you look like someone who's learning how to play guitar, you can improve instantly by just watching a favorite guitarist of yours in a genre that you like and just watch how they play. Even if you're bad at it, just try and mimic it. So for instance, John Mayer, when he's picking, he uses a lot of upstrokes and he makes his hand more clawy like this. He does this sort of stuff. He uses like really strong motions. Whereas someone like Damien Rice, who's like a folky, what would you even call that genre? Folk, I guess, folk sort of guitarist. Very soft. And very relaxed hand. This sort of thing. As opposed to, yeah. Flamenco guitarists have different positions. Pick a guitarist that you really like, with the music that you really like to play, and just look in the mirror and act like them. Act like them. You'll sound more like them than you think, quicker, even if you're not even thinking about playing properly. Even if you're just trying to look like them, you will play better. Now, with chords have a root note. So you may have noticed that the chords have names. D, A minor, E, G, F, B7. You don't know that one yet. B7. Okay, they're all named after their root note. So each chord has a root note. The root note is like the first note. It's normally the deepest note. It's the one that sort of tells you what kind of key or function or what the purpose of that chord is. The feeling of the chord will come from the first note. So for instance, you don't know this yet, or maybe you do, hopefully you do. Not expected though. A C chord and an A minor chord come from the same scale, just with a different starting point. And A minor is the same key as C, just with a different starting point. So I'll say it like this. A minor. You hear that note and you hear this, and you think sad, or at least not happy. You hear this, and you hear that, and you think happy, right? The starting note dictates what the feeling of the rest of the chord is going to be. Now, when you're strumming the guitar, make sure you're emphasizing the parts of the chord that make the audience or make the listener or yourself realize that it's that chord. So normally it's the top notes and then the highest notes. Reason I bring this up, not always is the top string involved, or the second string for that matter. So for instance, in A minor, the root note is the A, which is the open string on the fifth string, right? It's not E. So you want to emphasize everything below the E. You don't have to be super accurate, But in terms of how much force you're putting on the strings, you're going to aim your arc for that not top string. When you play a D chord, right? See how that sounded weird? This sounds weird. It sounds off. The reason is, top two strings aren't part of a D chord, so you have to play it from the fourth string down. Okay. So, emphasize the parts of the chord that are actually parts of the chord. D string, it's the bottom four. C, it's not the top string. E and E minor is definitely the top string, because remember, E is the top string. A minor, it's not. F, it is, because F is half a step, or one sort of degree away from E. So that's E and that's F. So E, E, F. It's just moving it up one. Lots of information. The things are in the description. Rewatch the video, slow it down, ask me questions in the comments. The roof is touching my hair. Okay. New song for this week, The Scientist by Coldplay. Capo, 3rd fret. New chord, B7. A B chord is something you're not likely to play at a beginner level, because normally it's a bar chord. But this one we're going to play as an open chord. We're going to take our not index finger and our last 3 fingers. So it's the middle finger, ring finger, and pinky. We're going to start on the A string, and we're going to put a finger every 2nd string. So you can think about it as a pattern of string, no string, string, no string, string. And try to avoid the E note, but if you can't avoid it, don't worry about it. And again, like normal, the strumming pattern is whatever you feel comfortable with. Just try and listen to the song and try and get it right. You don't have to follow some really rigid thing of, is it down or is it up? Is it up, up, down, or is it down, up, down, up? Don't worry about that. Just try your best, okay? Way better at this stage to get used to putting your fingers down and moving them around than it is worrying about down, up, down, up. Okay, so. Then we're going to go to G. You remember G from last week? Top 2 fingers, 3rd fret, 2nd fret. Like a C chord, except instead of using the middle fingers, we're going to use our first 2 fingers. And the reason why we're using our first 2 fingers is because these last 2 fingers have to go below them. So now it makes a nice diagonal shape. And okay, all these bottom 3 fingers are on the 3rd fret, and this index finger is on the 2nd fret. Then we're going to play D, that chord that I've been showing you all the time. And we're going to do something called embellishing the chord. Embellishing the chord is very simple. All you have to do, sometimes you take your middle finger off, sometimes you put your pinky finger on the 3rd fret below it. What we're really doing is that top melody that's in the chord, we're just changing it. You can practice that. If you want to practice early, we haven't learned this yet, but hammering on and pulling off, that involves letting the chord play and then putting a note on. So for instance, let's say I'm playing a D chord and I take my middle finger off and then put it back on. That sounds really nice, and that's the same strum. If anyone's a Jeff Buckley fan, he does that a lot. Different key because of the capo, but yeah. So we're going from B7, and for now, I just don't want you to worry about the 7 too much, but it means dominant 7, and it's like a slightly spicier version of a major chord. B7. That's all you need to know at the moment. Then to G. Now, the transition between B7 and G, see how I've got my bottom fingers together? Slide them up, right? Transition them so the top finger goes up, this finger goes down one, right? Make it as smooth as you can. Index finger comes on. The D chord, you're going to move everything down. So it goes like this. So. Then take your middle finger off. So that's the verse. That's the whole verse. B7. Come up. Yeah, you get the point. Now, at the very end of the verse, when you keep doing that over and over again, you're then going to go to an A chord. This is going to shit you to death because it's 3 fingers in a row stacked on the same fret. You're going to have some buzzing. That's all right. Strum the chord anyway. The buzzing's probably going to be on the E string. Remember, you're stacking your fingers on top of each other. They don't have to be completely separate. So you're stacking them together, and it's open note on the A string, and then 3 in a row on the 2nd fret. And then take, the same way that we were doing the D chord, taking your finger off, we're going to take our ring finger off to make it A7. See how it sounds a bit spicier? So, this is an A. Welcome to A. This is A major. That's A minor. A major. A minor. Right? And we're going to take our ring finger off. Now, for the chorus, it goes D, G. How does it go? This is the end of the chorus. Take me back to the start. D, G, D again, finger off. That's how it goes. Yep, okay. Look up the chords. I've forgotten the last one. But essentially, all the chords you need to know are B7, G, D, finger off, A, finger off, A7. And then the chorus is, pretty sure it's D, G, maybe A or D. I apologize for forgetting that last part. Please, 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 just look it up. If someone can tell me in the comments what it is, maybe I'll put it in the comments. Now, this song's going to be a little bit trickier because this B7 and this A both involve stacking 3 fingers in a row. It's difficult. It's not going to sound really cool at the start. You're going to have stuff buzzing because it's a lot of... See, with a C chord, there's a lot of room, right? They're separate. With an A, there's a lot of room for buzzing. Also, too, if your strings sound out of tune, tune them, right? But also, you could be pressing down really hard on the strings and see how that bends the strings. You'll learn soon that bending the string actually changes the pitch of it. Right? So, make sure that you're not actually bending them. Make sure that the lines look pretty parallel. Rather than... If you have to push really hard, make sure you're pushing straight down onto the board rather than across, because that's how you're going to get bending notes. Like and subscribe. Any comments in the comments below, leave them. Thank you for all your kind words. I'm sorry that I've forgotten the last chord of the chorus in The Scientist, but you'll find the chord diagram. And someone, if you're very altruistic, can leave that in the comments. Love you. Have a good day.